So before we start this basic HTML and CSS crash course, let me tell you again that you should only take this if you have no knowledge about HTML and CSS at all. So if you do, then just move on to the next section. But for the rest of us, let's now get started and learn a little bit about HTML structure and elements. And let's start by creating a new project folder here on the desktop, which I'm just going to call HTML CSS. And in this section, we're actually not even going to have any starter files. So we're just going to create everything from scratch. Okay, so let's go back to VS Code and open this newly created folder. And here we go. So let's open up, or actually let's create an index.html file. And index.html is always the name of the main file in any project. Okay, let's hide this sidebar here. And I'm going to use Command B for that, or Control B on Windows. All right, so HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And we use it to describe the content of web pages, basically. And an HTML document is made out of elements, and we write elements using an opening and a closing tag. The main element in all HTML documents is always the HTML element. So we write HTML, and then VS Code automatically gives us the closing tag. So you see the closing tag has just the same name as the opening tag, but then it has this slash here to close it. Okay, so every HTML document always has to start with the HTML opening tag and then close with the HTML closing tag. Then inside the HTML element, we always have the head and the body. So let's write that. Head and body. So this is always the structure that we use in HTML. Now, whatever we put into this head here is basically like the settings of the page. So it's like describing the page. For example, with the title. So for that, we use the title element. And let's call this one Learning HTML and CSS. And then once again, VS Code automatically gives us the closing tag here. So this title here is what's going to be visible in Google Chrome. So basically this title of the page right here. Okay, and you will see that in a second. Other things that we put here in this head, which is again like the settings of the page, is CSS styles or fav icons. So that little icon that appears here in browser tabs and stuff like that. Then whatever we put into the body is what's actually going to be visible on the page. And let's start by adding a heading here. And for that, we use the H1 element. And this is a level 1 heading. Okay, so you have H1, H2, all the way to H6. And they will have different styles automatically applied by the browser. Anyway, let's now give it here a title. And let's say, JavaScript is fun, but so is HTML and CSS. So just like before, we put the actual content here between two tags. So the opening tag, which is H1, and then the closing tag, which is this slash H1 to close the element. And different types of elements have different purposes. For example, H1 is to describe a heading, but we have other ones. For example, we have the P element to describe a paragraph. So let me show that as well. So let's write a little bit longer text here. So you can learn JavaScript without HTML and CSS, but for DOM manipulation, it's useful to have some basic ideas of HTML and CSS. And of course, the text here doesn't really matter. It's just so that we have some content on the actual page. And speaking of the page, let's now actually preview it here in Google Chrome. And for that, let's use the live server tool that we installed in the previous section. So for that, I'm going to use the integrated terminal by hitting Control/. Okay, so again, this very weird shortcut, or I can also do it from the menu. So that's going to be new terminal down here. Okay, then I can clear the terminal from all this weird stuff with Command or Control-K. And so now it's a bit cleaner. Again, it's not important at this point that you really understand everything about the terminal. We will learn really a lot about it kind of by the end of the course. For now, all we want to do is to use the live server, just like we did in the previous section. So when we hit enter on this, this should now open up the page in this Chrome window here. And indeed, here we go. And you can already see that the browser applied some basic formatting based on the type of element. So this H1 here is way bigger and bolder than the main text down here, which is this paragraph, right? And let's add another paragraph here so we can see it appear on the page as well. So P again, just another paragraph. So when I save this now, the result should automatically appear here on the right side. And here we go. And again, as I told you in the previous section, if this live server is not working for you, then that's no problem at all. You can always just open the HTML document itself. Anyway, let's take a look at another heading here. So as I was saying, there is not just H1, but also other type of headings. So let's simply put one here. So let's say an H2, another heading. And so as you see, this one here is a bit smaller than this one. And if I would change it to an H6, and you see automatically it changed the 6 here, and that's because of an extension that I have. I'm not sure if I showed it to you in the last section. So that extension is called the auto rename tag. And the one that automatically closes a tag that I open is this auto close tag extension up here. So these two extensions that I have here, they are very useful for writing HTML. Okay. And here you already saw this reloading. And so you see that H6 is actually even smaller than the paragraph text. Okay. So you see that these elements, which are composed of an opening and a closing tag, are really used to describe content in this way. Now, of course, we can do a lot more than just headings and paragraphs. For example, links or images. But for that, we need to learn about attributes. And we're going to do that in the next video. Now, just to finish this lecture, I wanted to show you that we can actually create this bare bones structure of HTML in a very easy way in VS Code. All we have to do is basically type exclamation mark and then tab, and like magic, all of this appears. So we still have the HTML tag, and then in there we have the head and the body just like we had before. The difference is that we also got this doc type here, which essentially identifies this document as being HTML5, and we also get this language here on HTML. So in this case, it's telling the browser that we're using the English language. Here is some other stuff that's also important, but that I'm not going to go into now. And then here is the title that we just specified also in our document up here. So now I will just go ahead and take this content and put it here in this structure because it's actually more complete. So just take this and cut it, put that here, delete all of this, give it a save, and let's put this one here back to H2. And here we go. Actually, we can close this one. And all right. So see you in the next lecture where we're going to talk a little bit about attributes and classes and IDs.